Hello, hi, good evening from the Netherlands, and hello everyone. My name is Sastraganda Sasot, and this is the For the Motherland blog, and I hope that you are enjoying your night. Um, those of you in the Philippines, I hope that you're having a good night, and those who are in other parts of the world, I hope that you're enjoying your day. It's um, it's a wonderful day today in the Netherlands because we have already relaxed lockdown restrictions, even though that we do have a huge number of cases on COVID-19 cases. Anyway, I'm not here to discuss the coronavirus pandemic, but I am here to discuss a very important topic that our country is facing right now, and that involves the South China Sea. For this live session, I have the following agenda. First is to explore whether the Philippines can exercise its rights and duties in its exclusive economic zone, or EEZ, in the same way as it could exercise those rights and duties in the Pacific Ocean. So meaning because the Philippines, I'm just going to show you the map of the Philippines so that you would see what I mean. So the Philippines is surrounded by different bodies of water, right? On the west, in the west side, there lies the South China Sea, and in the east is the Pacific Ocean. So the central question of my presentation, of my live session, is whether the Philippines can exercise its rights in its exclusive economic zone in the Pacific Ocean, just as in the same way that it could exercise them in the South China Sea. And after that, in order for me to answer that, I would need to discuss the Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaty Interpretation, and because it would help us understand Unclos, or the UN Convention of the Laws of the Sea. And after I did that, I would now proceed to the third part of my presentation, and that is differentiating the foreign policy of rapprochement and the foreign policy of resentment. Before I proceed, let me just first introduce my background so that you would know where I'm coming from. Just give me a moment. So, I graduated. I finished a combined major in world politics and global justice at Leiden University College. And through hard work and patience and a lot of dedication, I graduated magna cum laude at Leiden University College. And after that, I took a master's in international relations. So my academic training at Leiden University, specifically in my bachelor's degree, is very well-rounded. Okay, the program that I specifically followed combined international relations and international law. Okay, and of course, because we need to study law, we need to understand and be competent in interpreting treaties, because treaties are a huge part of the relations between states. Okay, and Unclos, the UN Convention on the Law of Treaties, is a treaty. Okay, and we actually studied how to interpret treaties in particularly two subjects. The first one is in public international law, and the second one is in legal method and jurisprudence. And in both courses, I did really well, so I actually know what I'm talking about. And yeah, so that's my background, right? So I know how to read treaties because I was trained, right? I got my training in treaty interpretation from Leiden University, which is one of the centers in the world that focuses on the study of international relations, right? It's one of the best universities in the world to study international law. Okay, enough of my background. I would now like to focus on the meat of my live presentation. So let's go back to the Philippine map. Okay. So just to refresh your memory. Okay. As I've said earlier, the Philippines is surrounded by different bodies of water. So you have the South China Sea in the west side and the Pacific Ocean on the eastern side. And of course, you do have Celebes Sea in the southern part. And I believe the Buhi Strait separates Taiwan and the Philippines. Okay. So why is this very important to emphasize? It is because in the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, you cannot exercise your rights and duties in your EEZ in the same way in different bodies of water. I will explain it later, but for you to understand this, we need to go through a very important treaty, which is the Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties, on how we should interpret any treaty. Okay, and that includes Unclos, or the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. So this is the specific provision in the Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties. Article 31 provides the rule, okay, the rule of how should we interpret a treaty. Article 31, okay, Article 31, General Rule of Interpretation. First rule, a treaty shall be interpreted in good faith in accordance with the ordinary meaning to be given to the terms of the treaty in their context, okay? I would like to emphasize in their context and in the light of its object and purpose. Meaning, you cannot just interpret a particular part of a treaty without regards to the entire treaty. Okay, so you cannot just get a snapshot. Okay, you cannot just get a snapshot of the treaty and call it a day. No, it doesn't work that way when we interpret treaty. And the second part of Article 31 specifically says that the context for the purpose of the interpretation of a treaty shall comprise, in addition to the text, including its preamble and annexes. I wouldn't enumerate all those contextual considerations because it's very complex, but let's just focus on in addition to the text. So meaning when you are going to interpret a particular article in a treaty, you need to consider the entire text because that is the context of the article. Okay. So what is going on right now? Okay, what is going on right now? The other parties, right, especially those who are opposing President Duterte, are focusing on Part 5 of Unclos, which deals with the exclusive economic zone. Specifically, they are highlighting Article 56, which of course lists down the rights and duties and jurisdiction of a coastal state to its exclusive economic zone. Can we call it a day? Okay, can we call it a day if we just rely on Article 56? As I mentioned earlier, we have to interpret a treaty in its context. So what is very important in the assertion of your rights in your EEZ? Okay. that is, okay. Okay, nawawala yung, where is it? That's part 9 of Unclos. Okay, I'm just gonna get the text so that you would be able to see it. Okay, so that's part 9 of Unclos. Okay, what does part 9 says? Okay, part 9 pertains to enclosed or semi-enclosed seas. Okay, Article 122 defines what is an enclosed or semi-enclosed seas. It says that for the purposes of this convention, meaning the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, enclosed or semi-enclosed sea means a gulf, basin, or sea surrounded by 2 or more states and connected to another sea or the ocean by a narrow outlet, or consisting entirely or primarily of the territorial seas and exclusive economic zones of 2 or more coastal states. Okay. Is the South China Sea a semi-enclosed sea? Yes, it is, right? Geographically speaking, it is a semi-enclosed sea. So what does Unclos tell us on how we should exercise our right, given that the South China Sea is a semi-enclosed sea? Article 123 is very clear. Okay, it says, states bordering an enclosed semi-enclosed sea should cooperate with each other in the exercise of their rights and in the performance of their duties under this convention. So, Article 123 of Unclos actually obligates, right, the states bordering a semi-enclosed sea to cooperate with each other in the exercise of their rights and in the performance of their duties. Meaning, you cannot just exercise your right and perform your duties without cooperating with other states around a semi-enclosed sea like the South China Sea. And specifically, Article 123 says that to this end, they shall endeavor directly or through an appropriate regional organization, meaning by directly, you can do it bilaterally, multilaterally, or through an appropriate regional organization. So they have a duty to coordinate the management, conservation, exploration, and exploitation of the living resources of the sea. And then they also have a duty to coordinate the implementation of their rights and duties with respect to the protection and preservation of the marine environment. They have also a duty to coordinate their scientific research policies and undertake, where appropriate, joint programs of scientific research in the area. They're also they should also endeavor to invite, as appropriate, other interested states or international organizations to cooperate with them in furtherance of the provisions of this article. But what is the most important thing about Article 123 is that, 1, if the sea in question is a semi-enclosed sea, you have a duty to cooperate with each other in the exercise of your rights. You cannot just exercise your rights unilaterally, okay? Because you have a duty to cooperate. That's the essence of Article 123. So when we interpret this one, okay, when we interpret Part 5 or specifically Article 56 of Unclos, we have to consider the geographical characteristics of the sea where we have our exclusive economic zone. Okay. We have to do that. And actually, we can also see that there is a duty to do this in the 1995, this is called the 1995 Straddling Fish Agreement. So this is supplementary to the Unclos Treaty. And this is concerning the what coastal states should do, how to implement the conservation and sustainable use of straddling fish. Okay, these are the migratory and highly migratory fish. So how should coastal states implement a specific provision in UNCLOS? Okay, this is what the agreement is about. So while the agreement, and we actually we are a party to this agreement, and we ratified the agreement in 2014. So even in this agreement, it actually references again Part 9 of the convention. It says here, right? Article 15 of the Straddling Fish Agreement. In implementing this agreement in an enclosed or semi-enclosed sea, states shall take into account the natural characteristics of that sea and shall also act in a manner consistent with Part 9 of the convention and other relevant provisions thereof. So why do you need to take into consideration the geographical natural characteristics of the sea? Because UNCLOS says that if it is a semi-enclosed sea, then you should cooperate with each other in the exercise of your rights and the performance of your duties, right? You should coordinate a lot of things, right? The management, conservation, exploration, etc. Why does UNCLOS have this provision, specifically on semi-enclosed seas? Why? It is because, I'm just gonna cover this. It is because semi-enclosed seas, okay, or enclosed seas have a very complex ecological system. What you do in your part of the sea will inevitably have a consequence to other parts of the sea. That's why you need to coordinate your actions. You need to coordinate a lot of things. You need to cooperate. Okay? So we do have a duty to cooperate with other coastal states of the South China Sea. And that, of course, includes China, because China is a coastal state of the South China Sea. So we have a duty to cooperate. Even though that we know that we have a right, we cannot just exercise that right without cooperating with other coastal states of the South China Sea. Now, I'm going to focus on this invention of the Aquino administration, okay? The West Philippine Sea. You know, the West Philippine Sea is making Filipino think that there is a portion, okay, the portion of the South China Sea that we could build a fence around with, right? So, and then we call it West Philippine Sea, that if someone crosses that fence, then they are violating our rights. The problem here is this: the West Philippine Sea is geographically wrong, right? It cannot be separated from the South China Sea. No, it can't, right? And because of that, any assertion of our rights in the West Philippine Sea, right, needs to be bound, right, needs to follow the provision in UNCLOS regarding what states should do if their EEZ is in a semi-enclosed sea. And I will repeat this over and over again, okay? And according to UNCLOS, right, if the sea is a semi-enclosed sea, in your exercise of your right, you should cooperate with other states bordering that sea. So we have a duty to cooperate according to UNCLOS, right? That's plain and simple. So we cannot just say that we do have a right. We must exercise that right in cooperation with other coastal states, because the South China Sea is a semi-enclosed sea. So what then is the problem? Okay, the problem now is they are criticizing the Duterte administration foreign policy of rapprochement with China. In international relations, rapprochement is simply about reestablishing harmonious relationships. Okay, usually states pursue a policy of rapprochement after in order to change the structure of the relationship of the two countries, right? For example, the Nixon administration pursued a policy of rapprochement in the 70s with China, and that established a harmonious relationship between the two of them, cordial relations. And this foreign policy of rapprochement led to a climate change in the relationship suitable to cooperation. Okay, so you cannot have cooperation if you don't pursue a policy of rapprochement, especially with a state that you are in conflict with, right? So you need to pursue a foreign policy of rapprochement in order for you to be able to produce a climate change in your relationship, which is conducive to cooperation. And in relation to our rights in the West Philippine Sea, this foreign policy of rapprochement is important because we are duty-bound by the UN Convention of the Law of the Sea to cooperate with other coastal states of the South China Sea because it's a semi-enclosed sea. So what is the opposite of foreign policy, the foreign policy of rapprochement? Okay. The opposite of the foreign policy of rapprochement is the foreign policy of resentment that is actually being promoted by these people, being led by former Justice Antonio Carpio. Okay, didn't you notice that they are not considering the duty of coastal states in a semi-enclosed states in the performance of their rights and duties when they talk about our rights in the Philippines, in the West Philippine Sea, right? That's very wrong, right? It's very clear in Unclos and in the Vienna Convention Law of Treaty of Interpretation. You cannot interpret a treaty outside its context, right? You cannot interpret a particular provision of Unclos without considering its entire text, right? Because there are other provisions there that might affect your exercise of your rights in your EEZ. And in particular, in relation to the South China Sea, our rights and duties there, we cannot exercise it unilaterally because the South China Sea is a semi-enclosed sea, right? And it's very clear in Unclos. Now, this foreign policy of resentment, right? This is not conducive to producing a climate change in the relationship between China and the Philippines that would serve as a fertile ground for cooperation, which is needed in order for us to fully comply with our obligations in the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. You see, the foreign policy of resentment being promoted by Carpio et al., okay, this is actually based on, right, us winning in the arbitration case we filed against China on the South China Sea. Okay. So we say that we won and that's the end of it. But that's not true, right? That's not true. It's not the end of it because the South China Sea is a semi-enclosed sea. You cannot say that we have rights and we call this part of the sea West Philippine Sea without considering the geographical characteristics of the sea. It is a semi-enclosed sea, therefore we are duty-bound by Unclos to cooperate with other coastal states in our exercise of rights and duties. Okay. Moreover, if we look into the arbitral tribunal decision on the South China Sea case, we would see a very important qualification, okay, very important qualification that the judges wrote. Okay, I'm just gonna pull it up for you guys. I hope that you're not bored. Okay, what is that important provision? Okay, not this one. Sorry, not this one. Okay, it is this provision. I hope you're enjoying, guys, and you're learning something. Okay. Okay, this is the provision. Okay. This is paragraph 1198. okay, of the South China Sea Arbitration Award of July 12, 2016. Okay, what does paragraph 1198 say? It reads as this: there is, however, no dispute between the parties that these general obligations define and regulate their conduct. Okay, I would like to emphasize this sentence. The root of the disputes presented by the Philippines in this arbitration lies not in any intention on the part of China or the Philippines to infringe on the legal rights of the other, but rather, as has been apparent throughout these proceedings, in fundamentally different understandings of their respective rights under the convention in the waters of the South China Sea. So what does this mean? Okay, lawyers would immediately know what this sentence means. It means that the arbitration tribunal didn't find any bad faith, okay? Didn't find any bad faith in any actions that China or the Philippines did in the South China Sea. Okay? It says there lies not in any intention, no bad intention, right? No bad intention on the part of China or the Philippines, right? They don't, both of them don't intend, right? Don't intend to violate their legal rights under Unclos. So that means that the arbitration case that we filed and we are celebrating already tells us na we cannot relate to China as if they have bad intention, because the decision itself says that there is no bad intention. So where is your resentment coming from? Right? Where are you basing this foreign policy of resentment when the arbitration tribunal decision itself found no bad faith, right? No ill intention, right? There was no intention. So because there is no intention, there's no bad intention, then you would have to relate to them in good faith, right? That they don't have a bad intention to violate your rights, right? They don't have. That's what the arbitration tribunal decision said. So then, what is now the proper policy to pursue, given, one, that we have a duty to cooperate with the coastal states of the South China Sea in order for us to exercise our rights and duties in our EEZ in the South China Sea, and two, that the arbitration tribunal didn't find any bad intention, didn't find any bad faith between in the actions taken by the Philippines and China. Right? So given these two conditions, right, that I have just presented, it seems to me that the best foreign policy to approach is the foreign policy that President Duterte has started in 2016, right? The foreign policy of rapprochement. Now, the foreign policy of resentment that Carpio et al. Are promoting will definitely lead to something else. And it's for you to decide, Filipino people, whether you think that the foreign policy of resentment of these people would lead to a climate change in the relationship between China and the Philippines that would be conducive to cooperation, which we are duty-bound to pursue under Unclos, or whether this would lead to more conflict and therefore less cooperation. Thank you.